I killed them because they were not innocent. They were guilty. I was innocent.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast.
Hello there.
So we had another topic in mind to do for our first podcast of 2024. But we really wanted to sort of change the direction of our podcast a little bit. We're still going to do those good topics like the serial killers and the mafia and whatnot, but this one kind of hit home. It's not very well known. It has to do with domestic violence, something that is still quite common, still out there. Statistics are climbing. So we really wanted to touch on that topic. So this week we are going to talk about Basil Borutski of Renfrew County, Ontario, which is basically the area of Ottawa. He came from a very strong family of self-sufficient people. The Borutskis lived in that area for quite a while. Basil was known as the school bully, very intimidating. It escalated over the years into a horrible event that happened on September 22nd, 2015. And it would change the lives of 4 different families. And it actually triggered one of the largest manhunts in Ontario history. Not ever, but for quite a long time. He carried with him many red flags over the years, and this is something that we're probably going to talk about quite a bit. There are quite a few of us here who have sort of been there and done that, had domestic violence in our lives in one way or another. And these red flags are usually quite common. You see them throughout these sorts of cases. And I think it's really important to get that out there for maybe somebody who's in an iffy relationship right now or in the future. These are the red flags to look for. And Basil Borutski is a prime example of an abuser. So we're going to get into it.
So in 1982, Basil Borutski met and eventually married Mary Ann Mask. They lived together with their 3 daughters in Round Lake Centre, Renfrew County, Ontario, about 2 hours away from Ottawa. And we're about 3 or 4 hours away where we are. Borutski worked for Atomic Energy as a millwright and was earning a pretty fair wage, but a car crash and a back injury ended his career abruptly.
So researching areas of domestic violence, you see that the abuser usually has something happen in their life that triggers that and their actions. In this case, he did turn to alcohol. He had a very, very good job and he lost it because of a car accident. And from then on, it seemed that he was this angry person, sort of, the world is against me. Most likely there was something already there, a mental health issue or whatever, but I think this is the point where it sort of brought it out of him.
And probably if he was already a bully too, there might have been something at home when he was a child that made him that way, or maybe that's just the way he is.
Yeah, and there was nothing said about his parents, and it is, it can be passed through the generations, but I didn't find that information, but definitely, I think, like I said, this is a starting point.
So they were married for a chaotic 26 years. In 1985 and 1994, domestic criminal charges were brought up against Borutski and were eventually withdrawn in court on a peace bond due to the fact that the marriage was dissolving.
Yeah, so that's absolutely ridiculous. And that is the problem, and it's still a problem, although it's getting really better in family law. But let's be real, the women were intimidated because they knew that he would go to jail and he would be let out and he would be even worse mad. So that's why, in this case here with his first relationship or his wife, it ended on a peace bond, and the marriage was dissolving, so they were getting a divorce anyway. So it was just like, okay, they're just going to part ways. I mean, that's the way the court is looking at it. But obviously Mary was intimidated by him.
So Mary told a judge during their divorce hearing that Borutski destroyed her spirit by relentless threats and abuse. One of their daughters told a judge that the violence included hair pulling, slapping, and once Borutski attempted to push Mary out of a moving vehicle. And nobody deserves that, no matter what the other person thinks they can justify their feelings for doing so. Nobody deserves that.
No, and it's just, he's just taking his frustrations out on her, and she's there, and she's allowing it to happen, which, we've all been there. Any of us who have been in that sort of relationship, yes, we're letting it happen, but they have such a hold on you. And, I mean, they were together a long time, 26 years. So, unfortunately, the children saw a lot as well.
And that's a long time to be with somebody like that, too. It didn't take long to start, I imagine, and 26 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, well, he pretty much had her where he wanted her, I guess. Like she said, he broke her spirit, so she just, like a zombie every day, going through life with him, right? That's usually the way it goes.
Another daughter said that Borutski repeatedly threatened to burn down the family home. And the home did burn down to the ground one day, but no charges were laid.
Yeah, so here's like basically the first point in this story where we see some neglect from authorities, because she told the police that he was threatening to burn down the home. They were separated, and he was threatening her just for like weeks and months, I don't know exactly how long, on end about burning down the home. So she reported it to police, of course. So when it happened, you think the police or whomever would say, okay, this can't just be a coincidence that he was threatening to do it and then it happens. But no charges were laid.
There was a contract that was signed between Mary and Borutski, which Mary stated was signed under coercion, giving him custody of their daughters and control over Mary's finances. It also included the forced statement by Mary, which read, "I have made false statements about him. I have destroyed the children's lives unknowingly."
Yeah,
and which would be so hard to be made to do.
Imagine she had to lie for him.
Well, and to say that about their kids, too, that she's the one who's ruined their life, when even the kids would know it was him.
That's how controlled she was, right?
Yeah.
That's how controlled she was, where she would admit to something, doing something that she didn't do to protect him. Yeah. It's wild when you think about it, and like I said, those of us that have been through it, you look back and you're thinking, why'd I do that? Why'd I say that? Why'd I let that happen? Why'd it go on for so long? This is such a prime case, and that is why we really wanted to do this case.
So Borutski tried to use this contract in court against Mary. He was trying to show that she was the bad guy, and the judge disregarded this contract, which is good.
Yeah.
I'm glad they could see that.
Yeah.
So judges are sometimes as much to blame as the police. This should have been a major red flag to the character and the mindset of Borutski.
You think it would?
You'd think it would be, but I don't know. And if I've never been a judge, I doubt I ever will be, but I'm sure if when you're trying to be fair and you have to consider all these different factors, no matter who is the suspect and the victim, I can imagine you might make a wrong call here or there. I mean, obviously it's happened a lot. But it must be hard. I don't know. I don't know if I could ever do it myself.
It would be hard, but the thing is that you have to treat every case the same, sort of, even though it's different situations. Like, the law is the law. And judges actually now, definitely they have to do it. I'm not 100% about, 20, 30 years ago. They have to go through training to, especially when they're working in family court, so they can recognize certain, like, I'll use red flags again, certain red flags in things, such as a ridiculous contract that he tried to put over to make her look bad. So that should have said something to this judge, like, okay, this is weird that this happened. What's wrong with this guy? I mean, they have to be unbiased, but on the other hand, they're also human, so they must have gotten some kind of vibe. I don't know.
Well, especially if the children were speaking out against him, saying the kinds of things he's done to her.
His own kids, yeah.
Yeah, and if Mary had ruined the kids' lives, they wouldn't be sticking up for her. They would be sticking up for him, right? So
it's amazing how much control they can have, and then it always trickles down to the children. And then before you know it, the children are intimidated by, saying something about their father, or, it could be I'm talking in terms of this case, but I mean, there's also the other end of it too, where women are like that in relationships as well. And men actually really, they suffer in silence too.
We were kind of talking about this when we were deciding on this topic. It's a human trait. Obviously, it doesn't matter necessarily which gender it is. Obviously, they're going to be exposed to different situations throughout their life that would bring these things out. But either way, it's a human trait. Could be men, could be women.
Oh, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship you're in. Sure. That is human. And it doesn't even have to be like a physical or a love relationship. It can be friends.
Could be
someone you live.
Even.
Sure. Yeah. There's always those people out there. And that's why it's good to know ahead of time. Let's prevent it. You are worth more than that. You don't have to stay with people like that. And just know the signs.
Everyone has a right to basically enjoy their life. Nobody has any right to hold anything over you or your life to determine whether you're happy or not.
No, you also have the right to live a safe life.
So this would be the first of many times that Borutski would claim to be the innocent victim of false allegations, by women in particular.
Yeah, so that's another thing with these type of people. They are the victim. And it doesn't matter how many relationships they're in, it's always all of those people's faults, not their faults. Even though they're the common denominator in it, it's never them. So there's this narcissistic traits involved as well. A lot going on in their minds, but they are the victim, always.
On New Year's Eve 2010, Borutski was charged with impaired driving. He accused the police of rigging the breathalyzer, and Borutski would claim years later that this was the beginning of the unfair treatment and targeting by the OPP.
Yeah, that's a whole other side of it. The whole world is against me.
So in 2011, Borutski met Nathalie Warmerdam, a divorced hospice nurse who was taking care of Borutski's father. Shortly after meeting, Borutski moved in with Nathalie and her son and daughter in her farmhouse in Renfrew County. Borutski's divorce was at the point of finalization, and Nathalie, believing his story of being the victim in his previous relationship with Mary, advocated for him during his final divorce proceedings.
Yeah, amazing how that happens, and that's so common too. They move on to the next relationship, and their new partner are actually believing them and yeah, he's grooming another victim here. That's what he's doing. Jumping from relationship to relationship and giving the woe is me story. And doesn't matter who you are. I mean, this woman was, she did something else before she was a hospice nurse. So she was also quite intelligent and educated, so it does not matter.
I think she was a teacher, wasn't it?
She might have been a teacher.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, it doesn't matter. Very smart woman. He just moved right into her home. And she let it happen.
At first, he was very helpful in the home. He helped her with chores and with the kids. And this was how he entered the woman's life, as a helpful man.
Yeah, always. And he uses this all through the years. And they always enter into your life as like the white knight, basically.
1 year later, in 2012, Nathalie ends the relationship with Borutski. He was arrested and charged with threatening to strangle Nathalie's son Adrian, threatening to kill a family pet, and mischief to property while living at the farm. Nathalie was warned many times by others about Borutski, and people around her noticed his alcoholism and possessiveness with Nathalie.
Yeah, so that was another thing that I discovered while researching this topic, which, like, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there about it, but a lot of people feel like the community sort of not failed, but everybody around her knew. I mean, in the end, it was up to her. It was her choice anyway to listen to them or not listen to them, but it was really well known in the community about what was happening in their household and what kind of a person he was, and I guess she chose to ignore it, but I don't really consider it a community failure, but it just sort of teaches us a lesson to, like, keep your ears open, and when you start hearing the same things from different people, maybe consider it. You know, not everybody's lying to you or trying to harm you. It's, it was up to her.
Their case went to trial. He was eventually sent to jail for 30 days in January 2013. And he was released on a 2-year probation and a 10-year weapons ban. Later in 2013, living alone in a farmhouse next to a scrapyard near Wilno, Ontario, Borutski finds a shotgun under the floorboards of an old motorhome and collects some half-rusted shells from old cars and pickups. He keeps the gun and salvaged ammunition in a garbage bag stashed in a bush along the roadside. Summer of 2013, Borutski met recently widowed Carol Colaughton at the Wilno Tavern. They began a casual relationship. Carol lived in North Gower, but owned a small cottage near Combermere on Lake Kamanaskeg. Again, he offered to help her take care of her cottage and doted on her. So the same technique.
The same thing.
Time.
And it's going to work again. He's slick. He's so slick.
He knows, that's narcissists, right? They know how to manipulate people to the best of their advantage.
Well, they know who to target too. So recently widowed, recently divorced, women who were sort of struggling without a man and had a home to take care of or something, definitely targeted.
And by the winter of 2013, Borutski is spending a great deal of time at the Wilno home of Anastasia Kuzik, who's a real estate agent and server at the Wilno Tavern. Once more, Borutski acted as a white knight, being very helpful and doting on Anastasia.
Yeah, so another one. So at this time, he's sort of seeing Carol. They're not in a relationship, but he actually goes on to build a relationship with Anastasia.
On December 30th, 2013, Borutski is arrested and charged with domestic violence after choking Anastasia and beating her to the point that she did not recognize her own face. He also burned her childhood heirlooms in front of her.
Yeah, so this is a lot of... he was physical with her, but also he's hitting her emotions, burning her childhood heirlooms in front of her. Like, that's
Just breaking her down completely, like.
absolutely, and that's all part of it. They want to torture you. They want to torture your brain, and they will harm something that you love, whether it be an item or, like Borutski before with the family pet, threatening the family pet. So they're going after something that's really, truly going to get you, right?
Well, threatening their son, too.
Well, I mean, the children, of course. The children are always part of it. Can't be avoided. And they definitely use the children as well. Yeah, anything that's going to hurt you deep down.
Anastasia told police that she could see the switch go off. It's like he was an entirely different person. His eyes went black, almost like he was possessed.
Yeah, and that's very true. Very, very true.
This time, Borutski spent 575 days in jail, again bound by a 2-year probation and with a lifetime ban from purchase and ownership of weapons. He refused to sign a court order which would bar him from any contact with Anastasia. He also fails to attend a court-ordered counseling for partner abuse and domestic violence. So how did he get away with all this?
And that is a big mystery, because he never did attend one meeting with the partner abuse and domestic violence counseling. Never did. Although I think he had a good reputation with visiting his probation officer. He didn't do any of these other classes that he was supposed to. So you would think he's not fulfilling. I mean, he's lucky he got out of jail. He spent a long time in there, but still, he's lucky he was out. 2-year probation is very light. This is a second offense as well of the same crime. Lifetime ban from purchase and ownership of weapons. Well, who cares?
It was already banned and
he had a shotgun already.
Yeah.
It's not like they looked into it. It's not, I mean, he hid it, of course, but they are also not keeping on top of him. And I think that's a failure from the system. He should have been going to those classes. And the result of not going to them, he should have been put back in jail. So what happened here? Don't know.
So 6 months later, in the spring of 2015, Borutski moved into Renfrew County Social Housing Complex in Palmer Rapids, Ontario. He quickly makes friends with neighbors Cheryl and her husband. Summer of 2015, Borutski meets up with Carol Colaughton at the Wilno Tavern and attempts to rekindle their relationship. He offers to do some odd jobs around her little cottage on Lake Kaministgag.
Yeah, so keep in mind, he was just put away for 575 days. So, I mean, Carol hasn't seen him for that long. She probably heard that he was just released from jail. He might have told her. And he's trying to sort of rekindle what they had before he was put away. She wasn't that interested in it, that's for sure. But she had a hard time getting rid of him, kind of.
Yeah, no, Carol was not interested in a relationship, but she tries her best to keep things friendly.
Yeah, what can you do?
Yeah. He begins doing unwanted work on her cottage, building a deck without asking and showing up unexpectedly by boat or car. He once drove 2 hours away to Carol's North Gower home after finding her address on a Christmas card at her cottage. And Carol had been warned by her friends that he was stalking her and she should be cautious.
Yeah, definitely. That's another trait, right? The stalking aspect.
Yeah, he just wants control over every aspect of her life, and he doesn't want her to have anything to do that doesn't involve him, it seems like.
Well, he thought he could just slide right back into her life after spending over a year in prison. Or it wasn't prison, it was jail. Because it was less than 2 years. But, yeah, he's so full of himself, he thought he could just get right back in there.
Yeah, and he just assumed she'd be more than happy to take him back and have him around.
Yeah.
So over the Labor Day weekend, September 2015, while watching from a distance, Borutski witnesses Carol and another man getting very intimate at her cottage. The next day, Borutski went by the cottage again and ripped up all of her flower beds out of anger.
Yeah, so just a total, I gotta say, just total asshole now. Like,
He figures he's being rejected, so he's gonna get.
yeah, now it's time to get vengeance.
Yeah.
And, you know, he just can't walk away. He just has to have his way. And this is such, like, another major red flag. These are the kind of people that you stay away from. If they just can't walk away from your relationship after saying you don't want one with them, yikes. It's going to get worse.
He found out who the man was, and he showed up at his house. He spoke at length with the man about his feelings for Carol, also mentioning his ex-girlfriends and ex-wife for some strange reason. Of course, the man found the conversation to be quite alarming.
Yeah, so even...
Well, you think he's just gone around there to have a date with Carol, and everything apparently went well, and then this guy shows up who we'd never met before, didn't see him on the day, and then he's telling them how he feels about Carol.
I feel bad also for anyone who is attempting to have a relationship with someone who is going through this sort of thing, because it would be so awkward, and I mean, especially when you have the ex coming to you, and oh my goodness, just I couldn't. It's hard enough being the victim, but I mean, what would you think and do in that position? It's scary. This guy's crazy.
A few days later, Carol contacted Borutski and told him that they could no longer be friends and she wanted nothing to do with them. So he proceeded to text her for hours at a time and calling her non-stop for several days. Carol shows the messages to her friends and they encourage her to call the police, which anyone should do in that situation.
Nobody fucking listens to me. Nobody helped me. Nobody. And I was not mine ever.
On September 14th, 2015, Borutski attended his last appointment with his probation officer, Carol Royer. She recalled it being like any other appointment, where he would complain about his housing situation and financial woes. He was barred from driving, but it was well known that he often borrowed a car from his neighbor.
And when I say well known, it was well known by the authorities that he was driving around. And you'll see the car and the driving are going to come into play in this event that happened not too long after this. When they knew he was driving, he should have been punished for it. He wasn't supposed to be driving. He was barred from it, and it was known. It was known by police. It was just fluffed off. And so many things could have been prevented here.
Once again, they're kind of not doing the best job they could be doing.
No, not at all.
September 20th, 2015, Carol Colaughton just celebrated her retirement over the weekend, and she tells Borutski over a text message that she had reconciled with the man she had been dating and asked him not to bother her anymore. And Borutski was devastated.
Yeah, so even though she told him that before, he still is holding out, he still has hope. He continued to text her, telling her how much of a vindictive, self-centered human being that she was, and that karma will take over. So he's a victim, she's the bad guy. It's just on and on. The next day, Borutski confronted Carol Colaughton at her cottage. She makes the fatal mistake of telling him that she and her boyfriend call him the BF, the best friend who will do anything. They had this big joke about it, and she was laughing at him. So,
not the best. I mean, compared to what he's done, it's not that bad. But when you're dealing with a person like that, it's not the best way to handle it. But I mean, I'm sure if she was feeling a bit better, he's out of her life. She's with this new guy.
She went back with her boyfriend and she's laughing.
Yeah,
know.
that's what I was going to say. I just think it was sort of her way and maybe her boyfriend's way of sort of dealing with it. Like, let's just have a laugh about it, kind of. We're together and he's crazy and whatever. So, but telling him is a whole other story, and it was just a mistake. Borutski returned home that evening and told his neighbor that he just caught his girlfriend with another man. Clearly, he was agitated. He shared a few drinks with his neighbors and discussed Bible passages, in particular, the difference between killing and murder. He tells his neighbor, "This is the Bible that I believe in, and I will share it with the judge." And there was an interview done with the neighbor on CBC, and even she said that, yeah, they noticed he was saying weird things and he was acting weird and it was a bit scary. That was the car that he was borrowing, was from her.
I could tell that night he was going to snap.
So also, you would think she would, especially from this conversation, think, okay, there's something that's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Maybe I should call the police, or maybe I should say something. I don't know. She didn't say a thing. He then retrieves the shotgun and shells that he found recently and stashes them in a bush outside of his apartment complex, and falls asleep on his couch with the Bible in his hand. So the date of this disaster was September 22nd, 2015. There was a lot leading up to this, or these crimes in particular. Everything sort of happened all at once here. So we're going to go through it step by step, basically a timeline. So September 22nd, 2015, Borutski leaves his apartment at 7:30 a.m., grabs the shotgun, and drives away in his neighbor's car. He drives 20 kilometers to the cottage of Carol Colatin and confronts her. He asks her why she doesn't love him. She doesn't answer him, but quickly retreats back inside the cottage, closing the door in his face. So, of course, this is going to make him even more mad. I guess he's thinking at the time, I'm going to give her one more chance before I do the thing.
He must have been probably obsessing over that Bible passage before he went to sleep, too. So he probably woke up with it still in mind. Might have even dreamed about it.
Because it's gonna justify what he's going to do, I guess. Mm-hmm. He smashes the glass window and forces his way inside. He strangles her to death on the bed with a television cable while she pleaded for her life. He smokes a cigarette and butts it out into her kitchen sink, empties her purse, grabs her car keys and cell phone, and drives away in her car, leaving the neighbor's car at Carol's cottage. So he doesn't care. It's not like he's trying to do these things sneakily or anything. He knows he's going to be caught.
When he robbed her too, left his neighbor's car there.
Yeah. He's not, his brain it's just one track mind right now.
Yeah. That's happening, and whatever is the outcome is the outcome.
Yeah. Oh, he probably wouldn't care as long as he got his own personal justice, I guess.
Yeah.
Borutski drives 33 kilometers to Wilno and arrives at the home of Anastasia and confronts her as she screams. Anastasia's sister Eva runs downstairs screaming at Borutski, who returns from his car with the shotgun.
Was visiting.
He shoots Anastasia in the neck as she hides behind a kitchen countertop. Her sister Eva runs for help and flags down a nearby road crew. Speaking frantically on a 911 call at 8:52 a.m., she tells the dispatcher that she heard a gunshot in her sister's home. So, he's got a plan. He's
just carrying it out as he goes, and I guess he's not worried about witnesses either. Again, he just knows what's gonna happen afterwards, and if he's in his mind, he's getting his own back on the women who did him wrong, even though they didn't do anything wrong.
No. His mind's not right. Borutski drives 32 kilometers through back roads and arrives at the Foymont Road farmhouse where he once lived with Nathalie and her son and daughter. Undetected, he calmly walks through her front door. Nathalie screams as he chases her through her home. He didn't notice that her son Adrian had run past him and out the door. Adrian got as far as he could and he called 911 and he hid for hours. He made it quite far away from the home, but he had already known what had happened, basically. So when Adrian was leaving the home, he heard the gun go off, so he knew exactly what was happening. So he ran and he hid and called 911 and let them know that he heard a gunshot. Borutski leaves and continues to drive east down Foymont Road when Colotton's cell phone rang. He tosses it out the window. It was recovered later, 9 kilometers away from Nathalie's farmhouse. So again, he's just dropping evidences here and there. He does not care.
I guess he just didn't want to hear it at the time.
So Borutski continues to drive. He drove through many rural towns. He said he was letting God guide him. He had other plans of shooting a man in White Lake, and that he would have shot any police officer who tried to stop him. He arrived shortly at the sawmill in White Lake. He asked 2 gentlemen outside if the big guy was around. He drove around the property looking for his target and he didn't find him. The target watched him from a distance as Borutski drove away, so he sort of gave up. I guess if he couldn't get to the guy right away, he knew he had to get out of there.
Oh, yeah.
Because by this time, there was a regional manhunt conducted by the OPP and expanded to include Ottawa police. Both forces believed that Borutski was venturing into city limits, and there were legitimate fears for further potential victims. Several buildings were locked down, including courthouses, schools, law offices. It was quite a big deal.
It was a couple of townships had to shut down. People were still to stay in their homes, and
yeah, it was 4 different townships, and they were thinking he was going to go into Ottawa and like really do some damage. So eventually Borutski pulls into a hydro right away. He stashes Carol Colotton's car near a family hunting camp and begins writing in a notebook. The first entry in the notebook, I hate money. So I have no idea.
yeah,
but
didn't seem to be his problem in the first place.
Again, he's out of his mind, right? It's sort of like the ones that write the manifestos, and you're thinking, oh my good, the state of mind you must have been in at the time when you were saying these things, right? So, but he thinks he's so important that he's going to write these. He has to write a journal.
Needs to leave his mark and his words for people to read.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's almost like he's going to have the last word sort of thing.
Yeah.
At this point, police have contacted Borutski's brother, Arthur. Arthur texts his brother very, very carefully and asks him if he was the one police were looking for. Borutski replied, yes, I did it. The guilty have paid. Justice, finally. I'm tired. And he was turning himself in. So, I mean, and that makes sense. Honestly, I wasn't thinking it was going to end that way. I thought it was going to end in a way that we don't like to talk about here. But no, he was going to turn himself in.
Like we were saying, he knew what was going to happen in the end, and it just wasn't really his concern. He just wanted vengeance.
Yeah. Yeah. Borutski proceeded to text his neighbor to let her know where he ditched her car and that he left $100 in the console for gas. Next, he texts his daughter saying goodbye. He said, sorry, Sarah, your mom took your dad away from you and Amanda too. I'm all alone. Nobody ever believes me. So imagine that's the last thing you're sort of saying to your daughters. Like, again, saying, sorry your mom ruined the relationship for you and lied to you about me, and nobody ever believes me, like being a victim again. By 2 p.m., with an OPP helicopter and Ottawa Police Cessna circling overhead, a tactical unit is scouting sniper locations, concerned that they could be walking into an ambush. So he gave himself up to the police. And he's communicating with them through his brother. And I guess they felt like, he could have a weapon on him still, or they just didn't want to approach him too quickly. They had to be very, very careful. So he was getting very specific instructions. Borutski walks out into a field as his brother relays police instructions by text. Hands up, no gun. The tactical unit breaks into an L ambush formation and arrests Borutski. As they are taking him away, he says to them, "Do you want to know where the gun is?" Police follow his directions and find the rusted old shotgun lying in the long grass next to a sandwich bag of shells and a note impaled on a branch. "I have no gun. Don't murder me. I give up."
I'm going to say, don't murder me after murdering 3 people.
And I actually have a picture of that note. It was submitted into evidence, so I will put that up here. It's just like he just wanted a big dramatic ending too, He wasn't about to take his own life, that's for sure, because he would have. After doing that, he knows what he's facing. Yeah, he really thought something of himself, that's for sure. And in his mind, he was doing the right thing. But again, it goes back to, the world is against me kind of thing. And that's another trait that comes through in a lot of these sort of abusive relationships is the man will tell the woman will tell the man, whatever the relationship is, you and I against the world. The world is rough, but we got each other. You can count on me. And that's basically, that's how they isolate you, right? Everybody hates us. The world is this. So that's where his mind is, except just for himself. The world hates him. Nobody believes him. He's innocent. He's, reads the Bible. A lot going on there.
And then you get out and you're stigmatized and you live your life. You have no idea what it's like when to know that you've done nothing wrong.
The trial of Basil Borutski lasted 119 days. About 50 people, including some family members and friends of the victims, filed silently into the courtroom each day. So it took a little while before he would get his sentence. In December 2017, he was automatically sentenced to life in prison without a chance for parole. And he would not have a chance for parole for 70 years for the murder of 3 of his former partners. So he doesn't have a chance for parole.
No, he's already in his 40s or 50s.
Well, by the time the 70 years would have gone by, he would have been 128 years old. This is just, they had to apply that because it's per victim, and also they weren't going to give him parole, but they still have to give him parole.
Do you understand how what's happened to these 3 women is wrong?
Yeah.
Would you take it back if you could?
Of course you would.
So, big difference here between, let's take Paul Bernardo, for example, who has had chances at parole. And makes you wonder sort of, his crimes were just as heinous. And How did he get a chance at parole? You know, how do
Yeah.
some of these other ones? This is an appropriate sentence. This man should not be walking the streets ever. He should never have the chance to walk the streets ever. And a lot of them shouldn't. So, but in Canadian law, criminal law, they have this 20 to 30 year, and then they have to give you a chance at parole. To me, I think this is quite appropriate. This is the way it should be done. He will never see the light of day. He's going to die in prison.
As well, he should.
Yes, yes. And a lot of them should. Just outside the courthouse that day, flags flew at half-mast in honor of the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. So, it ended well. It's unfortunate that that had to happen. But this is such a prime example of a relationship or multiple relationships that could go horribly wrong, go the wrong way, and get very, very serious. So important to recognize a lot of those early red flags and let's prevent this from happening. So yeah, we thought this was a very, very important case to get out there. Like I said, the statistics are still pretty staggering when it comes to domestic violence. And we cannot control the actions of others. We just can choose to not go there, not get involved with them. So I'm going to put a few resources in the description, and some of the statistics as well. And that is the case of Mr. Borutski, who will never see the light of day, thank goodness.
Yeah, he is where he needs to be, and that's where he should stay.
So thank you for joining us for this one. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye, guys.